You are fired. Consider it a gift to you. The text message glared back at me from my phone screen as I stood in my wedding suit, holding a champagne glass. Just 10 minutes ago, I had said my vows to Audrey, the love of my life. Now, standing in the quiet hallway of the chapel, surrounded by the scent of fresh lilies and the distant laughter of our guests, I felt a cold shock run down my spine. Jared Holloway, my boss's son and the newly appointed director at Summit Architectural Group, had chosen this exact moment to end my employment. I showed the message to Audrey. She did not panic or look upset. Instead, a small, knowing smile played on her lips. She gently squeezed my hand, kissed my cheek, and said, "Check your messages tomorrow, Arthur. Today is about us." Her calm voice was a solid anchor, but my mind was spinning. I was 50 years old, and I had just lost the career I had poured my life into for the last 2 years. I was the lead project manager at Summit, the city's top architectural firm, and I had worked 80-hour weeks to build their entire modern workflow. But I trusted Audrey, so I put my phone on silent, slipped it into my pocket, and walked out to join our wedding reception. Before I tell you how a single text message brought a multi-million-dollar firm to its knees, let me explain how we got here. If you enjoy stories about workplace justice and corporate reckoning, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe. It helps ensure the algorithm keeps showing you our stories. Now, let me tell you about the system I built. My name is Arthur Vance. I am meticulous, sometimes to a fault. I am the kind of man who organizes his garage by tool weight and maintains a personal spreadsheet for home energy usage. In my line of work, that level of detail is a superpower. At Summit, my colleagues called me the Index because I could recall structural dimensions, budget margins, and regulatory codes from projects completed months ago without opening a single file. My father was a carpenter and my mother was a librarian. They taught me that precision is a form of respect. When my father got injured during my early years, I worked late shifts at a logistics warehouse while earning my degree in project management. I learned early that without a clear system, everything falls apart. When Lawrence Holloway, the founder of Summit, hired me 2 years ago, the firm was still relying on outdated shared drives and paper logs. Important blueprint revisions were routinely lost, and budget overruns were common. Lawrence gave me a mandate to modernize the entire operation. I spent my first 8 months developing a proprietary database from scratch. I called it the Summit Core. It was a closed system that tracked every blueprint iteration, structural engineering stamp, zoning permit, and cost allocation. I wrote the code myself, utilizing federal trade secret protections to ensure the intellectual property remained mine, licensed only to Summit during my employment. The system was a massive success. Construction delays dropped by 35%, and client satisfaction soared. Lawrence told everyone I was the most valuable asset the company had ever acquired. But then, Lawrence decided to step back from daily operations due to his health. He promoted his 32-year-old son, Jared, to department director. Jared was a man who possessed all of his father's arrogance, but none of his work ethic. He had spent his 20s bouncing from department to department, leaving a trail of frustrated staff behind him. From his first day as my supervisor, the atmosphere turned toxic. Jared was threatened by my standing in the company. He began excluding me from client meetings. When I proposed updating the system training manual for the junior staff, he rejected the budget, claiming it was a waste of resources. He wanted to prove that he was in charge, and he wanted everyone to think my database was easy to run. During this stressful period, I met Audrey. She worked as a senior compliance officer at the city's building permit department. She was the thoughtful woman who reviewed our structural submissions. We connected over our mutual respect for regulations and details. Audrey became my sanctuary from Jared's constant undermining. But as we grew closer, she began noticing troubling discrepancies in the files. Summit was submitting for the Downtown Revitalization Project, a massive city contract worth over $40 million. Specifically, these were projects Jared had taken over from me to present to the board. We planned a simple wedding. We did not need a lavish celebration, but as the date approached, Jared's hostility grew. He started dropping hints about restructuring my department and bringing in a younger team. Still, I never expected him to fire me on my wedding day. Back at the reception, while our guests were enjoying dinner, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I excused myself to the restroom and checked the screen. I had 42 missed calls and 15 voicemails. All of them were from Lawrence Holloway. I pressed play on the first voicemail. "Arthur, please call me back immediately." Lawrence's voice sounded strained, almost breathless. "Jared has made a massive mistake. He had no authority to terminate you. We need you to log in right now. The city board is demanding the final structural stamps for the downtown project by Monday morning, and nobody can access the Summit Core database." Jared tried to bypass the security protocols and locked the entire server. 3 more voicemails followed, each more panicked than the last. The final one was from Lawrence himself, pleading, "Arthur, the main engineering firm is threatening to pull their certification if they cannot verify the load-bearing calculations in the database." Jared thought he knew your master password, but he was wrong. The system is completely frozen. Please, name your price. I stood in the bathroom looking at my reflection in the mirror. I wore my best suit and my wedding ring felt warm on my finger. Instead of anger, I felt a calm sense of power. For 2 years, I had maintained the Summit Core. I was the only person who knew the encryption keys and the manual override sequence. Jared had spent months telling his father that my role was redundant. Now, the company was staring at a multi-million-dollar disaster because of his ego. Audrey was waiting for me outside. She looked at my phone and then at me. "I think it is time I told you what I found," she said quietly. I looked at the recent structural updates Jared submitted to my department last week. He altered the structural steel specifications after the lead engineer signed off on them. He substituted cheaper grade materials to save $2 million on the budget, hoping to pocket the difference as a departmental bonus. My blood ran cold. That is not just cutting corners, Audrey. That is a structural failure waiting to happen. She nodded. I have already downloaded the original signed drawings and compared them to his altered uploads. I was going to flag it for an official audit next week. But since he fired you today, you are completely free of any liability. If you had still been there, they might have tried to blame the system or your oversight. I looked at my phone, which was buzzing again with another call from Lawrence. "What do we do?" I asked. Audrey smiled, her eyes bright. "We do nothing. Tonight, we celebrate our marriage. Tomorrow, we board our flight to our honeymoon. Let Jared explain to the city why the database is locked and why the structural plans do not match the engineer's stamps." I slipped my phone back into my pocket, took my wife's hand, and walked back to the dance floor. For the rest of the night, I did not think about Summit Architectural Group. I danced, I laughed, and I toasted to our future. But as we boarded our flight to Costa Rica the next morning, I knew that the storm back home was only just beginning. Costa Rica was beautiful. We stayed at a small, quiet resort tucked between the rainforest and the ocean, far away from the traffic and noise of the city. For the first 3 days, I kept my phone completely powered off. I spent my mornings drinking strong local coffee on the balcony, watching howler monkeys move through the canopy, and my afternoons walking along the black sand beaches with Audrey. It was the first time in 2 years that my mind was not constantly calculating construction schedules or worrying about server load. I felt a peace I had almost forgotten. But on our 4th evening, while we were sitting at a candlelit table overlooking the Pacific, I felt a familiar vibration. I had turned my phone on to check the flight status for our return trip. Instantly, the screen lit up like a Christmas tree. I had 284 missed calls, 96 text messages, and my voicemail box was completely full. Audrey watched me over the rim of her glass. "Is the world ending back home?" she asked with a soft smile. "Pretty close for Summit," I replied. I decided to play the messages on speakerphone so we could listen together. The first one was from Lawrence, recorded on Monday morning, the day the downtown project approval was due. "Arthur, please. We are in a complete crisis. The zoning board rejected our submission because the database is locked and we cannot export the structural verification reports. The client is threatening to sue us for breach of contract. I will double your previous salary of $140, $0 to $280,000 if you log in right now and unlock the system." I deleted the message. The next one was from Wednesday. Lawrence's voice sounded significantly weaker, the confidence completely gone. "Arthur, I know you are angry. Jared was out of line. I have suspended him from his director role. Please, we are losing $50,000 every single day this project is stalled. I will give you a 10% equity stake in the company and make you a full partner. Just give us the database access keys. I deleted that one too. I looked at Audrey. A partner, I murmured. 2 years ago, I would have given anything for that offer. Now, it feels like nothing. Audrey reached across the table and took my hand. That is because you know your worth now, Arthur. And you know that if you go back, you will spend the rest of your life cleaning up Jared's messes while Lawrence watches over your shoulder. You cannot build a clean house on a rotten foundation. So what do you suggest? I asked. She leaned in, her eyes sharp with the intelligence that had made her a top officer at the city department. The City Planning Commission is looking to overhaul their compliance and audit division. They need an independent consulting firm to design a new verification protocol for large-scale developments. They want a system that prevents exactly the kind of structural tampering Jared attempted. The idea hit me with the force of a physical blow. You want me to bid for the city contract? I want you to start your own firm, Audrey said. You spent 2 years building a system for Summit that they could not even run without you. Build a system for the city. Be the gatekeeper. Summit will have to pay you to verify their submissions. And they will have to do it on your terms. By the time our plane took off from San Jose the following Sunday, I had drafted a complete business plan on my tablet. I mapped out the software requirements for a public compliance database, the fee structure for independent audits, and the staffing needs for the first 12 months. I named the company Vance Compliance Consulting. On Tuesday morning, exactly 10 days after my wedding day, the business registration went public on the state registry. My phone rang less than 30 minutes later. Lawrence Holloway, Arthur. Thank God you are back, Lawrence said before I could even greet him. He sounded like a man who had not slept in a week. I saw the registration. You started a consulting firm. This is perfect. We will hire your firm immediately. Whatever your retainer is, we will double it. Just get the database unlocked so we can submit the plans for the downtown project. I let the silence hang on the line for 5 long seconds. The sound of Lawrence's heavy breathing was the only noise. I am afraid I am not available for private hire by Lawrence, I said calmly. What do you mean? You have a consulting firm now. We are your biggest client. My first client is the City Planning Department, I replied. I have just signed a contract to design and manage the new structural verification protocol for all major city developments. From now on, any submission Summit makes will have to pass through my firm's independent audit before the city will even look at it. There was a sharp, sudden gasp on the other end of the line. I could hear Lawrence processing the implications. If my firm was managing the city's compliance audit, we would immediately flag the altered structural drawings that Jared had submitted. Arthur, please, Lawrence's voice cracked. Jared made a terrible mistake. He was jealous of your relationship with me, of how much I trusted your work. He thought he could prove himself by cutting costs and managing the system on his own. He is young. He is my son. Do not ruin him. Some bridges are meant to burn. Lawrence, I said, and when they turn to ash, you do not rebuild them. You build a better road somewhere else. I ended the call and looked out the window of my new home office. I felt no anger, no malice. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man who had stood his ground and won. The next week, my contract with the city officially began. Using my knowledge of how architectural firms manipulated data to bypass zoning laws, I designed a 3-phase verification system. It required digital signatures from the structural engineers at every stage of the design. Locked behind multi-factor authentication, any change to a load-bearing element after the initial sign-off would automatically trigger an alert to the city audit team. As part of the system implementation, the city ordered a retroactive audit of all submissions from the past 6 months. My team began reviewing the files Summit had submitted for the downtown revitalization project. The findings were worse than Audrey had originally documented. Jared had not only substituted cheaper steel, he had also thinned the foundation specifications by 15% and removed 2 fire exit access points from the main blueprints to fit more office space. It was a recipe for catastrophe. The city's response was immediate and merciless. The downtown project was halted, and Summit's permit was revoked. The city council voted unanimously to terminate their contract and reassign the project to a competing firm. Jared Holloway was placed under investigation for fraud and document forgery. His professional project management certification was suspended indefinitely, and he was blacklisted from any city-funded work. Summit Architectural Group lost the $40 million contract. Their reputation, which Lawrence had spent 30 years building, collapsed in less than a month. Through my industry contacts, I heard that Lawrence had suffered a minor heart attack from the stress and was hospitalized. I felt a brief pang of regret for the old man, who had been a decent mentor to me in the beginning, but he had chosen to protect his son's incompetence over the safety of the public and the integrity of his business. Meanwhile, Vance Compliance Consulting thrived. Within 6 months, we had 12 full-time employees and contracts with 3 neighboring municipalities. Audrey resigned from her city job to join me as our chief legal compliance officer. We were building a legacy together on our own terms. Exactly 1 year after the day I was fired, a thick cream-colored envelope arrived at my office. It was addressed to me in Lawrence Holloway's neat, old-fashioned handwriting. By this time, Vance Compliance Consulting had grown significantly. We had just moved into a larger office space downtown, and Audrey and I had bought our first home, a beautiful 1920s craftsman house that we were renovating together. Our lives were full, busy, and successful. I opened the letter. "Dear Arthur," it began. "Some debts can never be fully repaid, but acknowledgement is the beginning of atonement. I have spent this past year trying to rebuild what my son's arrogance and my own blindness destroyed. Jared has completed a court-ordered professional ethics course and is currently working in a junior position under strict independent supervision. Summit has new leadership and new rigorous protocols. We have overhauled every system and submission process. I am writing to ask if you would consider meeting with me. Not to return to Summit, as I know that bridge is turned to ash, but to consult on our new safety systems to ensure we never fail the public trust again. Sincere regards, Lawrence Holloway." I showed the letter to Audrey that evening while we were preparing dinner. "What do you think?" I asked. "Should I meet with them?" Audrey read the letter slowly, then looked up at me. "What would be your purpose in going?" she asked. "Closure? Vindication? Or just professional curiosity?" I thought about it for a moment. "Probably a little bit of all 3, I admitted. "And maybe I want to see if a man like Lawrence can actually learn from his mistakes." "Then you should go," she said, kissing my cheek. "But remember, you are the one holding the keys now." I scheduled the meeting for the following Thursday at 10 a.m. Gregory had requested we meet at Summit's offices. At first, I wanted to refuse. I did not want to step back into the building where I had been humiliated. But then I realized that returning as an independent authority, rather than a subordinate, was the ultimate form of vindication. When I walked through the glass doors of Summit's lobby, the atmosphere felt different. The receptionist, a new face, stood up immediately when I gave my name. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice full of respect. "Mr. Holloway is waiting for you in the main conference room. Please follow me." As I walked down the familiar hallways, I noticed the changes. The desks were clean, and the screens displayed new, structured compliance software. The old, chaotic atmosphere was gone. It looked like a professional firm again. The conference room door was open. Lawrence was sitting at the end of the long mahogany table, looking much older than he had a year ago. His hair was completely white, and his face was lined with deep stress. Beside him sat Jared. The arrogance that had once defined the young man was completely gone. He sat stiffly, his eyes fixed on the tabletop. Lawrence stood up immediately and extended his hand. "Arthur, thank you for coming," he said. His grip was firm, but his voice was quiet. I shook his hand, then took a seat across from them. I did not offer any small talk. I simply waited. Lawrence cleared his throat and looked at his son. "Jared has something he needs to say to you first, Arthur." Jared finally looked up. His eyes, which had once looked at me with such contempt, were now subdued. "I owe you a sincere apology, Arthur," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "What I did to you on your wedding day was unprofessional, vindictive, and completely unacceptable. Worse than that, my actions put public safety at risk and nearly destroyed this firm. There is no excuse for what I did. I am truly sorry." The apology sounded rehearsed, but the shame coloring Jared's neck and face was genuine. Still, an apology did not change the past. I appreciate the words, Jared, I said. Keeping my voice flat and professional, Lawrence slid a blue folder across the table toward me. This company has been restructured from the ground up, he said. Jared is no longer in management. He works as a junior drafter, and every single one of his files must be verified by 3 separate engineers. We want to hire Vance Compliance Consulting to perform a complete audit of our new protocols. Inside is a contract offering a retainer of $150,000 for a 6-month review. As I scanned the contract, Jared reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a smaller envelope. He placed it on the table and slid it toward me. This also belongs to you, Jared said, his hands shaking slightly. I opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for exactly $24,500. What is this? I asked. That is the exact cost of your entire wedding, Jared said, down to the last flower arrangement. My cousin's best friend was your wedding planner. I asked for the total. I wanted to pay it back, consider it our gift to you, the one I claimed to be giving when I had no right. I stared at the check, then at Jared. Beside the check, he placed a small silver USB drive. And that is the source code for the Summit Core database you built, Jared added. We managed to restore basic operations, but we cannot run it properly without you. It belongs to you. You can take it, or you can delete it. I looked at the silver drive. For 2 years, I had poured my intellect into that system, only to have it used as a weapon against me. And now, these 2 men were offering me money and my own software back, hoping to buy their way back into my good graces. A flash of anger flared in my chest. Did they really think $20,500 could erase the humiliation of being fired by text on my wedding day? But as I looked at Lawrence's tired eyes and Jared's humbled posture, the anger faded. I realized something profound. True power is not about crushing your enemies until they are destroyed. It is about having the power to destroy them, and choosing instead to let them rebuild themselves under your rules. I slid the check back across the table. The check is unnecessary, Lawrence, I said, standing up. Seeing your son learn the value of integrity is gift enough for me. I picked up the blue folder and the USB drive. I will review your audit proposal, I continued. But my fee will be $300,000, paid entirely in advance. And I have one more condition, name it, Lawrence said immediately. Jared will personally complete every single compliance and training module my firm assigns, I said, looking directly at the young man. He will learn every regulatory code, every safety protocol, and every verification step from the ground up. He will become the company's foremost expert on doing things the right way. If he fails a single module, the contract is void. Jared swallowed hard, but he looked me in the eyes and nodded. I understand, Arthur. I will do it. I gathered my coat and walked toward the exit, leaving the wedding refund check sitting untouched on the mahogany table. That evening, as Audrey and I discussed the meeting over dinner, my phone pinged with a news alert. It was a major headline in the local business journal. The architectural firm that had taken over the downtown revitalization project after Summit lost the permit was now under state investigation for bribery. The report alleged they had paid off city officials to fast-track their structural approvals, bypassing several key engineering reviews. I stared at the screen, and the puzzle pieces suddenly clicked into place. I looked at Audrey. Lawrence knew this was coming, I said. He did not invite me to meet out of pure guilt or respect. He knew his competitor was about to go down, and he wanted my firm's clean reputation to help Summit seize the project back when it fell. Audrey set her fork down, her expression hardening. He wanted to use your name as a shield to win back the city's trust. It is the same old corporate game. I pushed my plate away. I felt a brief wave of anger, but then I began to think. This was not a trap. It was leverage. By morning, I had formulated a strategy. I called Lawrence at 7:09 a.m. I have reviewed your proposal, I told him, and I am rejecting the consulting contract. I will not work for Summit. There was a heavy, silent pause on the line. Lawrence sounded crushed when he finally spoke. I understand, Arthur. I cannot blame you. However, I continued, I am proposing a different arrangement, a formal partnership. Vance Compliance Consulting and Summit Architectural Group will operate as completely separate entities. But we will bid for the downtown project as a single joint venture. My firm will have absolute veto power over all structural, safety, and compliance decisions. We manage the project workflow. You handle the creative design and construction. That is highly unusual, Lawrence said slowly. The board will resist giving an outside firm that kind of control. You fired me on my wedding day, Lawrence, I replied. Unusual situations require unusual safeguards. I am not putting my reputation at risk for Summit unless I hold the steering wheel. If you refuse, I will present my own independent compliance proposal to the city for the project, and I will recommend they select a different design firm. You have 24 hours to discuss this with your board, I added, and then I hung up. Exactly 23 hours later, Lawrence called back. The board had approved the partnership with a 3-year minimum commitment. 2 weeks later, the competitor firm was officially stripped of the contract, and the city announced that our new joint venture had been awarded the $40 million downtown revitalization project. The local newspapers called it a new era of accountability in public construction. Jared was assigned to the project as a junior coordinator, a role 5 levels below his former director position. Every morning, my team sent him a detailed training module on structural safety and municipal compliance. Every evening, he was tested on the material. If he failed a single question, he spent the next day repeating the module. To my surprise, Jared did not complain. He showed up to work early, completed every assignment, and began asking thoughtful, intelligent questions. He was quiet, focused, and worked with a quiet determination I had never seen in him before. About 3 months into the construction phase, I arrived at the downtown site at 6:30 a.m. for an unannounced concrete pour inspection. The sky was still a pale gray and the morning air was cold. As I walked past the heavy machinery, I spotted a figure in a hard hat and high-visibility vest standing near the foundation forms. It was Jared. He was holding a clipboard, checking the concrete truck delivery tickets against the approved mix specifications. You do not need to personally verify the slump tests, Jared, I said, walking up behind him. That is what the site engineers are for. Jared flinched slightly, then turned to face me. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. I know, Arthur, he said, but I want to understand every step of the process. If I do not learn how to verify the materials at the ground level, I will never understand why the compliance regulations exist in the first place. I studied his face, looking for any trace of the arrogant, spiteful man who had fired me via text. I saw none. I saw only a humbled professional trying to rebuild his career from scratch. I decided to ask the question that had been in the back of my mind for a year. Why did you do it, Jared? I asked. Why choose my wedding day to fire me? Jared looked down at his clipboard, his shoulders dropping. Because I knew you were right about everything, he said quietly. I knew the training manuals were necessary. I knew my budget cuts were dangerous. But I could not stand the fact that you had built a system so essential that my father respected you more than he respected me. I wanted to prove I was powerful. I wanted to hurt you when you were happiest. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with genuine regret. Instead, I watched the entire company collapse because of my ego. I destroyed the best mentorship I ever could have had. We stood in silence as the first construction workers began arriving at the site. The rumble of a concrete truck filled the air. You cannot change what you did, Jared, I said finally. But you were right about one thing. I would have been a good mentor, and I still can be if you earn it. A small flicker of hope appeared in his eyes. How do I do that? By putting the safety of the public and the integrity of the work above your own ego, I said. Now, show me what you found on those delivery tickets. For the next hour, I walked Jared through the chemical properties of the concrete mix, explaining the scientific reasons behind the setting times rather than just citing the municipal codes. He listened intently, taking notes and asking precise, logical questions. I realized then that Jared did possess a good mind for the business. It had simply been buried under years of entitlement and insecurity. Over the next few months, our partnership model gained national attention. My consulting firm grew to 15 employees, and Summit began rebuilding its reputation. Jared continued his training, gradually earning the respect of the field engineers and the construction crews. About 6 months into the downtown project, I received an unexpected visit at my office. It was Chloe, my former assistant from Summit. She had stayed at the firm when I left and was now working directly with Lawrence as a senior coordinator. I offered her a cup of coffee. "What brings you over, Chloe?" I asked. "Lawrence wants to promote Jared," she said without preamble. "He wants to make him the assistant project manager for the final phase of the downtown development, but he sent me here to get your honest assessment first. He will not approve the promotion without your green light." I leaned back in my chair, considering the request. Jared's work reports had been exemplary, and my training team had given him perfect marks on all safety modules. He had shown a genuine commitment to learning the rules. "I will support the promotion," I told Chloe, "but on one condition. Jared must handle the upcoming neighborhood community presentation entirely on his own. He needs to stand in front of the residents whose trust he broke and represent the project. If he can handle their questions with integrity, he earns the title." The community meeting was scheduled for the following Wednesday evening. It was a high-pressure event. The local residents were skeptical. They had seen the previous developer get shut down for bribery and had endured months of delays. Many were angry and expected more empty corporate promises. I attended the meeting incognito, sitting in the very back row of the community center. When Jared stepped up to the podium, I noticed he was visibly nervous. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the microphone. The old Jared would have covered his anxiety with a layer of arrogance and dismissive charts. This version did something completely unexpected. "Good evening, everyone," Jared began, looking out at the crowd. "My name is Jared Holloway, and I am the assistant project coordinator. Before we discuss the construction timeline, I need to address the past. 1 year ago, this project was halted because of safety violations and structural alterations. Those mistakes were mine. I tried to cut corners to save money, and in doing so, I violated your trust and compromised public safety. There is no excuse for what I did." A quiet murmur rippled through the hall. The raw honesty took everyone by surprise. Jared took a deep breath and continued, "I am here today to show you how we are doing things differently now. Through our partnership with Vance Compliance Consulting, every single architectural drawing, concrete pour, and structural support undergoes a triple verification process. Nothing is built without independent approval. We are not just building offices, we are building a structure that is safe for your families." He spent the next hour walking the audience through the updated blueprint designs, highlighting the green spaces and safety exits that had been added. When the residents asked sharp, hostile questions about the traffic impact and structural safety, Jared did not get defensive. Several times he simply said, "I do not have that data right now, but I will find out and email you the answer by tomorrow morning." By the end of the evening, the hostility in the room had dissolved into cautious optimism. As the crowd dispersed, I slipped at the side door before Jared could see me. The next morning, I called Lawrence. "I heard Jared did well last night," Lawrence said immediately, his voice tense with anticipation. "He did," I replied. "I was there in the back, and I am officially giving my endorsement for his promotion." "He has earned it, thank you, Arthur," Lawrence said, and I could hear the deep relief in his voice. "You have no idea what this means to us." "Just remember, Lawrence," I cautioned him, "trust is rebuilt in small, consistent acts of integrity over time. One successful presentation is a start, but he must continue to prove himself every single day." "I understand," Lawrence said. "We both do." After I hung up, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city skyline. In the distance, I could see the cranes working on the downtown project. I realized then that this was not the scorched earth revenge I had imagined on my wedding day when my phone was buzzing with missed calls. It was something much more valuable. I had not destroyed Summit. Instead, I had created a system where they were forced to adapt to my standards. I had built a thriving business, protected public safety, and helped guide a young man away from a path of corporate dishonesty. That evening, Audrey and I walked past the downtown construction site on our way to dinner. The setting sun reflected off the steel frame of the new buildings, casting a warm orange glow across the concrete plaza. "Are you satisfied with how it all turned out?" Audrey asked, wrapping her arm through mine. "I am," I said. "The buildings are safe, the community is getting their park, and my firm has secured its future." She smiled. "You know, when I showed you that text on our wedding day, I thought you would want to burn the whole place down." "I thought about it," I admitted. "But you showed me that the best revenge is not destruction. It is building something better on your own terms and making the people who tried to hurt you play by your rules. Audrey laughed. Speaking of which, the renovations on our Craftsman house are finally complete. Should we invite Lawrence and Jared over for a celebratory dinner? I smiled and shook my head. Let us not push it. Professional respect is one thing, but friendship is quite another. Fair enough, she agreed. One step at a time. As we walked toward the restaurant, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text message from Jared. Thank you for supporting my promotion. I will not let you down. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed my response. Make sure you do not. Some gifts cannot be returned. I hit send, realizing the date. It was exactly 1 year to the day since Jared had sent me his gift on my wedding day. The symmetry was perfect, and I knew the message was clear. In the end, I did not get even. I got ahead, and I did it by rising so far above my enemies that they would spend the next several years climbing just to reach the standard I had set. If you have stayed with me through this story, ask yourself, could you show the same restraint? Could you turn a betrayal into an opportunity to build something lasting? It is not the easiest path, but the most satisfying victories are the ones where you rebuild from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever turned a professional betrayal into a personal victory? I would love to read your stories, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss another story of corporate justice and success on your own terms.